it keeps rising for a family of 5 in Lusaka. Do you think there's enough political will to reduce the cost of living? And what measures do you think government can take to respond to this crisis?
Thank you. Before we get into it, let me seize this opportunity to wish all the women of the world Happy Women's Week. And also let me wish the Christians prayerful Lent season, and also to wish my brothers and sisters, the Muslims, successful prayerful Ramadan. I'm hoping that during this period, people shall moderate their attitudes and appetite and be more prayerful, because I think this country requires prayers now than ever before. The attitudes that most politicians are exposing towards the faithful is not the right attitude. I think time has come for us to try and change our attitude. Now, the question you have asked me is a very important question. Is there any political will? There is rhetoric. That's what there is. There is rhetoric. We hear people talking about what they are doing to try and reduce the cost of living, but we don't see any positive impact on the cost of living by their rhetoric. I think that there is a lot that the UPND could have done to reduce the cost of living. First, they should have not done away with the source of highest revenue in the country, the tax on the mines. Every Zambian must be aware of the fact that the largest foreign currency earning sector in Zambia is the mining sector. And indeed, the mining sector is the one that is supposed to be the milking cow for the sake of developing the country. The UPND government, soon after forming government in 2021, one of the first things they did was to go into cahoot with the mining companies, whereby they decided that mineral royalty tax, which was introduced by previous governments, not even the PF, it was introduced by the MMD government by Levy Patrick Munawasa. We in the Patriotic Front may just have come to change the approach to the mineral royalty tax. However, the UPND, in their wisdom, decided that they'll make that tax deductible. The argument they present is that the mining companies are still paying the mineral royalty tax. However, the truth of the matter is that that mineral royalty tax that mines pay is deducted from the final tax which the companies are paying. And once you make it tax deductible, what you're literally saying is that the government is simply borrowing that money. And when the time comes for the government to receive what is due to the Zambian people through the tax, the final tax which the mine should pay, it is deducted. The government pays back to the mining company. In effect, there is no mineral royalty tax that's being collected in Zambia. Recently, you heard that the government had decided to even do away with the 15% export duty on precious metals. But when you look at the international market, and there are many publications showing you how Zambian precious metals are being sold on the international market. Our minerals are fetching a lot of money. And the government argued that because of the 15% duty that miners were paying on the export of mineral royalty on precious metals, the precious metals were becoming too expensive on the international market. And therefore, they decided to do away with the precious minerals export duty. In effect, what that means is that companies can mine your precious metals and export without any benefit to the Zambian people. The third is the agricultural sector. The UPND government has really created a mess of the agricultural sector. And they created a mess because, unfortunately for them, they are looking at governance from a highly partisan perspective. They thought that when the Patriotic Front increased the quantity of inputs that were being sent to the northern part of the country, it was because we were paying back for votes. We were not paying back for votes. What we were doing in increasing the quantity of inputs in the northern province than what was the practice hitherto was because we saw the weather pattern. We saw the shift of the rain pattern from the southern part of the country to the northern part. Those who are as old as I am and older than I am, and those who have studied the climate pattern in Zambia will remember that in the 60s, 70s, and part of the 80s, the southern part of the country received the very best optimal rainfall for production of maize and other crops. Towards the end of the 80s and the 90s, the pattern shifted. The optimal rainfall for crop production moved to the central part of Zambia. This is the reason why you also saw farmers moving from the southern part of the country towards the central part of the country. In the 2000s, again, it shifted. And this is because of climate change. And as you are well aware, the Sahara Desert is growing towards the north. And because of that, we in the Patriotic Front realized that if we continued to give little input to the northern region, because the people in the northern region have not been used to large-scale farming, they've been used to small-scale chitemene farming, we'll be missing and losing out on the opportunity that God has presented to the people in the north. That is where the optimal rainfall is. That was the reason why in the year 2015, 2016, we decided to increase the quantity of inputs to the northern part. And your listeners may wish to know, and they can go and research this, they can go to Zamstats, they can go to Ministry of Agriculture. They'll go and find that ever since 2016, the bulk of maize production in Zambia has been from the northern region. Why is that? It is not because the people of the other parts of the country have stopped producing. No, it is because the rain pattern has shifted and it's favoring the northern part. When the UPND came in, they said, no, this was a political decision. And they decided to reduce the quantity of input being supplied to the northern region and instead moved it to other parts of the country. Which parts of the country, I'm afraid, were not receiving, and up to now are not receiving optimal rainfall. When they receive rain, it is above optimal rainfall for maize and crop production. There are floods in those areas. So this is one of the biggest challenges that the UPND has created for the country and created for themselves. Over and above that, and I know that the UPND don't like to hear this, but their appetite for cash, their appetite for money, led them to offloading the granaries of Zambia. The Zambians will remember how ministers were going with the ZNBC cameras to our maize sheds and saying, look, there is so much maize that we have in the country. We don't need all this maize. We're going to export it. They exported strategic reserve. And because there was no maize the following season, they were forced to import. And they started importing GMO. And you heard about the aflatoxin that was in our maize, the aflatoxin that people were subjected to. Also bear in mind that the imported maize was being imported at a price higher than the price at which our local farmers were being made to sell their maize to FRA and through FRA to our millers, and therefore the price of milling meal increased. All these challenges and the mess that was created by the UPND government.
Mr. Lubinda, my question to you from your submission is, as far as taxes are concerned, would we be in a better position, and how would the situation be like on the ground if this mineral royalty was not made deductible? Where would we be today?
Would have been in a much, much stronger position, because that mineral royalty would have been contributing to government revenue. A country which has a budget that is financed 80% from tax from employees is not a productive country. A country must generate revenue from its natural resources. In Zambia, unfortunately, government budget is financed by you and me, the workers. And yet the productive sector, the mining sector, is not releasing any revenue to the economy. This is the reason why we're where we are today. When you hear them that they're not willing to subsidize fuel, they're not willing to subsidize electricity, they're not willing to subsidize anything, they're not willing to subsidize agriculture to the extent that the PF was subsidizing, it is because they are cash strapped. They don't have the money. And they don't have the money because the mining sector is not generating the money that it should be generating. People must not forget that the mineral resources of Zambia are an endowment of all Zambians. That's not an endowment only for those who have the capital to go and start mining. No, those resources were an endowment for every Zambian. All of us should be getting a benefit from the mines because that was God-given to Zambians. As things are now, that endowment is only benefiting the mine owners and their friends. Unfortunately, this is why we're where we are today. The government is broke. It is literally broke. Remember that in 2021, when they took over office, they were bragging on all radio stations and blaming the PF and saying, we have challenges because of debt. Now we're paying huge amounts of money for debt servicing. Well, they entered into debt restructuring and they said, now we've got in a debt restructuring program and we're going to save the money that was supposed to have spent on debt servicing. But what happened over the last 4 years? Whereas they found the debt at 14 billion, they have moved it, in 4 years, they have moved it to 21 billion. In 4 years, they have borrowed 7 billion. What has caused them to borrow? It is because they have been unable to finance domestic requirements from domestic revenue. And they have failed to do that because they are missing the opportunity of taxing the mines.
I want to go back, as we're talking about this issue to do with tax regimes, with the mining. The UPND, when President Hakainde Hichilema was sworn into office, he set an ambitious target of us producing 3 million metric tons of copper in 10 years. Looking at what has been done to the tax regime and the production, as far as production is concerned, what has happened in the last 4 years. Last year we did hear that now we're producing more copper in a long time. Don't you think we are moving in the right trajectory as to us changing our tax regime so that we attract more investment?
You know, to say to your children that we're going to cook more nshima for you, all right? And yet you consume less than what you're consuming when we're cooking less nshima is diabolical. They are producing more copper now than we were producing before. But what is the impact on the lives of Zambians? What is the contribution of that increase in production to the revenue of the country? Zero. So we're even better off leaving the copper where it is. Leave it to the future generations because they might be wiser. They might come and exploit that copper for the benefit of Zambians. Because now, what are we getting out of it?
Is it true to say there's zero
What is there
addition if we produce more copper?
There's nothing we're getting. For as long as we're not taxing them, it means there's nothing we are getting.
Again, let me also throw another question to you, Mr. Lubinda. Is it true to say we're not getting anything from our minerals?
We're not getting anything because the mineral royalty tax is not being collected. Duty on export of precious metals is not being given to government because the government has said, take it, keep it. Remember what they even did with the maize. We were exporting maize. Whenever we had surplus, we were exporting maize. But at the point of export, we were also collecting export duty. When these guys came in and they said we're going to export all this maize, they even suspended export duty. What did that mean? That duty component which should have gone into government revenue was now being allowed to go into private pockets. The miners of these precious metals, when you tell them that we're going to take away duty, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to pay the workers more. No. All it means is that they are going to reduce the price of the emeralds on the international market. Or if they don't, the extra duty which they should have paid, the 15%, goes into their bank account instead of it going into Control 99 to support the cost of living of Zambians. So people have also argued, and they will also argue all the time. UPND will argue and say the mines have employed a lot of people. Yes, the mines have employed a lot of people, but compare the population of the people that are supported by the mines to the total population. Let's assume that the mines are employing a total of 20,000 people, and each of those persons is supporting 5. It's 100,000 people that are benefiting from the salaries they are getting from the mines. But what is 100,000 people compared to the total population of Zambia? 20 million. Those mines are supposed to impact the 20 million lives. Not only the 100,000 who are directly employed by the mines. No. This is the point that people must understand. And those 100,000 people, the government is getting money from them as pay as you earn. Instead of the government getting money from the exploitation of the minerals, they are concentrating on collecting money from the worker. No, that is wrong. What we must be doing in this country is to ensure that all natural resources, when we exploit them, the government collects revenue for and on behalf of the citizens. After all, that is the number one role of a government. The role of a government is to ensure that it collects on behalf of the people and distributes so that there is equity in the economy. What is happening now is that the government is failing to collect revenue on behalf of the Zambian people. Instead, it is allowing foreigners to keep the money outside Zambia. And once money is kept outside Zambia, what do you think happens? Your kwacha is devalued because there is no foreign currency coming back into the economy to come and support your kwacha.
Mr. Lubinda, you're in government. The PF did introduce similar taxes and withdrew them as well after conversations with these investors. What is different now that the UPND is doing things that you did as a PF as well? I'll give you an example of sales tax that was introduced and it had to be reversed as well.
The sales tax was to be a replacement of value-added tax.
Mm-hmm.
But when the economy and the participants in the economy said this was going to be a very challenging taxing system, we reverted to VAT. So it's not as though we suspended anything. We did not. There was an idea to replace value-added tax with sales tax. All right? Now, when we saw that it wouldn't be as effective to collect tax as through the formula of VAT, we did away with sales tax. We did away with the plan to introduce sales tax to replace VAT. So please let the listeners get it correctly. We did not abolish sales tax at all. Sales tax was abolished many years ago when VAT was introduced. And we were thinking that we may reintroduce sales tax because some people were thinking it would be more effective, more efficient. But after consulting with stakeholders, we realized it was going to be a more problematic system. That's how it was abandoned. So please make no mistake, we did not do away with sales tax.
Best of those reasons that you've given, let's look at the reasons that have been put forward by the UPND government as to why they decided to remove the 15% export duty, of which they put reasons forward to say our gemstones will be fetching higher for a higher price on the market. Don't you think they have valid reasons for doing that?
There are no valid reasons. For as long as you want people to export your minerals and they keep all the money and there is nothing that is being attributed to your revenue. There is nothing that is coming from the export of your minerals to impact the lives of Zambians, then that exercise is an exercise in futility. It is totally useless. That's why I even said you are better off shutting those mines. If you're not able to utilize them for the benefit of Zambians, shut them until another generation that will be wiser than you comes to exploit those minerals for the benefit of every Zambian. You can't allow that a few people who have the money, who have the systems to support them. Okay, because most of these miners, they don't even have the money themselves. They go to their countries and borrow from the banks. They come and invest in your country and they exploit your minerals and they come to you and say, they arm twist you. Look, if you don't take away duty, we can't export these minerals because the international price is low. And you also agree, all right, just export them, don't give us anything. Now, why are you allowing them to export? Why are you allowing them to, in the first place, exploit the resource? It is the same as you and me having a small garden, and you tell a person, come and farm here. And the guy comes to tell you, yes, I'm going to farm, and I'm going to live in your house. But I'll not pay you rent, and also I'll sell my product, but don't get any revenue from it. Why would you have such a person?
Again, we do get revenue from these gemstones, Mr. Lubinda, because the comparison that was made was, look at Brazil, one of our competitors as to, in this gemstone field. They charge 2% on their taxes. If you add up our taxes, if we had added the 15% to the current 6% that they are paying, our gemstones would be fetching on the market with a 21% tax regime on it, compared to our competitors who only have 2% on the market.
You're making wrong comparisons. Okay, you're making wrong comparisons. What is the 2% that Brazil is charging?
Export tax.
Export tax.
Yes.
And what about mineral royalty tax? What are they paying? Don't tell me that it's free. It is not. All the other countries that are producing minerals, all the other countries that are producing oil, they make money from those companies. Okay? And the majority of them, especially in Central America and South America and in Asia, most of those companies, if you go and look at their shareholding, their governments have a stake in it. Some of them as high as 60%. For you in Zambia, 0. Even the little shareholding you had, you gave it away for a song. At the end of the year, the companies you're talking about in Brazil, they also share the profit with the government. So even if they were to reduce tax, but at the end of the year they are making profit which the government is going to collect. Here, you give away the shareholding that you had, 51% you take it down to 0, and then on top of that you even give them incentives that we don't even want you to pay us mineral royalty tax. And by the way, for the sake of the listeners, mineral royalty tax is the same as rent. You are renting my house. You pay me rent for my house. And if my house has a poultry and you're running my poultry, when you make profit in that poultry, give me some of that profit. All right? But you say to the person, the rent is free, and also the profit you make there, don't even pay me anything. Are you in your right frame of mind? No. So please, you're making wrong comparisons. Compare apple with apple, not apple with banana. The countries you're talking about have shares in those companies. They participate in the profit. Here, we don't. And this is the reason why we in the Patriotic Front, in the first place, were saying enough is enough. We cannot allow foreigners to exploit Zambia's resources at the expense of Zambians. Let us find ways of ensuring that the government has a stake in these companies. So that even if we come up with these ideas of how to increase production and how to increase the market, the benefit must be seen to be impacting on Zambians. That is the point.
The World Bank recently reclassified Zambia as a poor nation. In fact, Zambia is now one of the poorest nations in the world. How does that make you feel?
Very sad. Extremely sad. That we're the 6th poorest nation, and yet we're the 10th largest producer of copper. That's paradoxical. It is a paradox that we're the 10th largest producer of copper, and yet the 6th poorest country in the world. And especially now that we're being governed by people who said they knew how to run the economy. They promised you and me that they'll come and turn things around because the PF were failing, the MMD failed, UNIP failed. They will come and change things, and they have changed things for the worse. It makes me feel extremely sad. We had brought Zambia, the PF had brought Zambia to become the bread basket of the region. We were producing enough maize to feed the region. What have we become? A country that is now importing maize. Those are reasons why we have become the 6th poorest country. Okay? Instead of paying back the 14 billion, which they've been complaining about, they've increased it to 21 billion. And how do you expect the economy to improve? How? And when you ask, where is the 7 billion? Show us where you spent the 7 billion. For goodness sake, show us one road you have done. The only road you have done is the one in Shantumbu, going to the president's house. That's the only road you have done. Where is the 7 billion? How has it impacted on the people? You talk about free education. Fine, show us the new university you have built for those children who are attending free education. Show us the secondary school you have built. Show us a cancer hospital you have built. Instead, even the cancer hospital you found is now dilapidated, and there are no drugs. But you borrowed 7 billion. This is what is creating the crisis where Zambia has become the 6th poorest country in the world.
What's the solution here, Mr. Lubinda?
The solution is to kick out UPND next year. That's the solution. Kick out UPND next year. Unfortunately, UPND were full of themselves, and unfortunately, they are not even willing to accept that they have failed. Every day they are banging their chests. Every day, me, I've done this. I am the first out of all the presidents. I'm the first one to open a mine. For goodness sake, that mine was closed because it was not making any benefit for Zambians. You remember very well that a lot of these copper mines had closed at a time when the price on the international market was low. The government did not say, oh, because the price of copper is low, we'll allow you to just export and there is no benefit to Zambia, just export. No, the government said we still need our share. Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. And the company said, in the meantime, we'll close. Yes, close until the prices improve. Okay? You cannot continue growing your cabbage, and yet the market is flooded, and you say, I'm just going to grow it and give it away for free. Then you must be insane. The market forces dictate what to produce. And if there is no appetite for the emeralds at this particular moment, please don't waste them by digging them up and throwing them away. No, leave them where they are until such a time that the prices increase. This is simple economics. This is simple application of the rule of supply and demand.
So, for you, Mr. Lubinda, the solution that Zambians must seek is to kick out the UPND. But I want to throw another problem at you and see how you would deal with it as the PF if you were in government today. Because Zambians have been experiencing long hours of load shedding, which has affected the country's manufacturing sector, and the manufacturing sector has not been spared to this. And we've seen how many hours of load shedding we're all getting. What needs to be done to find a lasting solution? Because we experienced this under the PF as well, load shedding, and we're now experiencing it again with the UPND. How do we then find a lasting solution to this problem?
A lot of Zambians remember that when there was the shortage of local supplies, local generation of power, the PF government, realizing that the economy was going to be crippled if we didn't find alternative sources of power, we decided to import power. Remember when you got the power ship docked in Mozambique, supplying Zambia power, and we were getting money from the copper mines and some of the borrowed money to ensure that the economy continued to operate. This is the reason why you did not see places going without power for days to no end. No. We were a caring government. We did not think about our pockets. We did not think about lining our pockets. No. We subsidized fuel because we realized without fuel, the Zambian economy will grind to a halt. Okay, so if you ask me what would we do different, number one, we would not continue to export power at a time when there's no power for our saloon operators, when there's no power for our young people who are in the welding business, when there's no power for our butcheries. Today, if you go to a butcher, they will tell you meat has run out because we can't stock enough. Because if we stock a lot, our cold rooms will just not work. There is no power. What impact does that have on the cattle producer? It means that even the cattle producer can't sell as much cattle as they should. What does that mean for the rural economy? It collapses. And then you have a president who was telling you, when I come myself, I'm going to make sure that you have 3 square meals a day. Now he goes around and tells farmers, please, when you eat supper, that nshima that remains, don't throw it to the dogs. Keep it so that you can use it as chimbala in the morning. He does not even realize that there is no family that even leaves food on the table anymore, because people can't afford it. How can people having 1 meal a day even have spare to live for tomorrow's chimbala? There used to be the concept of chimbala when there was a lot. Now there is nothing. Children have to scrap the bottom of the pot. What chimbala are they going to have? And who has caused this? The one who has caused this is the one who has given his friends tax holidays. The one who has caused this is the one who has sold your maize. And yes, I agree that some of these problems are inherited, especially in the agricultural sector. It is inherited. But what is inherited is that Edgar Chagwalungu was not like Joseph to prepare for 7 years. Had it been Joseph, he should have actually stacked up maize for 10 years, knowing that there will be 5 years when there will be Hagainde who will not produce anything. But unfortunately, we couldn't do it. We had produced for 3 years. And they sold the maize that we had for 3 years, they sold it in a few months. And where is the money that they generated? Huh? The ones who sold the maize are private people. The government didn't get a kwacha.
I want to take you back to my question, Mr. Lubinda.
Yes.
What's the solution? What's the lasting solution to load shedding?
The lasting solution to load shedding is to increase the generation of power. And if you look at the PF Manifesto 2021-2026, we had lined up new hydro stations that we wanted to build. We had also come up with the idea of encouraging people, private sector, to put up power stations. They are talking now about common carrier, as though it is their idea. It is not even their idea. Ask him, Bita Chitala, call him on this radio station. Bita Chitala was chairman for ZESCO. I was Minister of Justice. And I can't remember, I think Yaluma was Minister of Energy. That is when we amended the ZESCO Act to make sure that ZESCO becomes a common carrier. And the reason we did that was because we were preparing ourselves for the private sector to participate in the generation of power. And we knew that the major challenge was transmission. That's how we said, let ZESCO be a common carrier. And they come and implement it, but they implement it in such a haphazard fashion that it's not impacting on the people. When the people who are supposed to go and put up your hydro power stations are looking for power, then you're exporting your power to Namibia. And I want to say thank you very much for the cabinet secretary from Namibia who came and told you Zambians that you Zambians, while you are suffering, you are facing load shedding. This government is so benevolent to us Namibians. They are continuing to give us power. Who does that? Your children cannot go to school because you have no fuel in your car. But because you are such a strange fellow, you are getting money and giving your neighbors' children to pay. They can't even go to school in a bus. But mine must not go to school. And you say that you're a productive father. No. That is short of being insane. Because you must protect your economy first. Huh? We heard the story that if we stop exporting power now, when we have a shortage, when we increase our capacity, that market will have collapsed. Other people have penetrated that market. And therefore, when we increase our production, we'll have nowhere to sell power. You will not increase your production of power for as long as your economy is stagnant.
How would
First,
you
grow your economy and make sure that there is investment in better generation. And then you can start to think about how to supply other countries.
Mr. Lubinda, how would you increase the power generation of the nation? We did see that, as a PF then, the projects on the Kafue lower gorge, but experts have told us that every 3 years we're expected to have a drought in Zambia or this particular southern part of Africa. After 3 years, there's that drought that happens. Okay? So, do we still continue to invest in hydropower? What is the long-term plan for the PF if they were to come back into office?
to tell you what our plan is, I'll tell you what we also planned just when we got into office in 2011. Zambia's generation capacity in 2011 was 1,600 megawatts. And knowing the statistics that you are mentioning, that there will always be a drought every 3 years.
Yes.
Okay? And knowing that the economy was growing and the demand for power will continue to grow, what did the PF do? The PF borrowed and invested in more generation capacity. By 2021, we had doubled Zambia's power generation capacity to 3,200 megawatts. We were also alive to the fact that during the seasons of drought, the hydropower stations would not generate as much power as would require. What did we do? We encouraged investment in alternative sources of power, such as Mamba collieries. I'm sure you know that Mamba collieries came upstream during the time of the Patriotic Front. Mamba collieries phase 2 was a PF project. Okay? You had the oil plant in Ndola, thermal power plant in Ndola. Why? Because we knew that we would require other sources of energy. I've spoken to you about solar. We already had plans to encourage the private sector to invest in solar farms to provide power alternative from hydro. So when you vote back the Patriotic Front, we will not have to go guessing because we already have all these plans lined up. All that we'll do is to dust these 5 years that we have lost and continue where we left it. Continue along the same planning trajectory that we had. I've told you about the planning trajectory we had on common carrier. The reason we were doing that was because we wanted to encourage private sector participation in the generation of power. So that's what we'll do different.
All right. I want us to have a conversation about your party, the Patriotic Front. You as acting president of the Patriotic Front, what are your immediate priorities for the party, and how do you plan to reorganize and revitalize the party structures?
The structures of the party are intact, totally intact, and I'm very happy that unlike what our doomsayers have been trying to do, they have failed to reach to our members. They have failed to reach our structures. They have failed to destabilize us. The only thing that they have managed to do is to hijack the officialdom of the party. What do I mean by that? Because they have the power, they have managed to change the office bearers, the official office bearers on a piece of paper that is domiciled at the office of the Registrar of Societies. That's the only thing they have managed to do. The rest remains the same. As a matter of fact, the rest is on an incremental trajectory. More and more people are coming to the Patriotic Front. And this is more the reason why we're extremely happy that our colleagues in other opposition political parties realize that the Patriotic Front is not dying. Instead, it is growing. And our friends said to us, come and partner with us so that we grow together. And we're happy to be a party of the Tonse Alliance. And as I speak to you, I agreed to come on this radio station because of the respect I have for your invitation. My colleagues right now are having a meeting. The Tonse Alliance Council of Leaders are in a meeting, after which they will have a press briefing. But I decided I'll come here and I'll ask my colleagues to go ahead with that meeting, and I'll ask my party to represent me at that meeting. But I wanted to come and spend time with you, and through you, with your listeners. Straight from here, I'm going to join my colleagues. So the truth of the matter is that the Patriotic Front has not been negatively impacted with regard to membership. It has been negatively impacted, and this I can't deny, it has been negatively impacted insofar as officialdom is concerned. We cannot participate in by-elections using the name Patriotic Front because the ECZ without reference to any law, decided that because we have changed the official office bearers at resource societies, now for any candidate to fight in nomination, we must see the name of the president and the name of the secretary general, so that they go and compare with the names at the official names at the registrar of societies, and they disqualify our candidates. Yes, that is a negative to us. We are not able to organize rallies in the name of the Patriotic Front, because when we do, then they'll ask, which faction do you belong to? Okay, so we are suffering out of that. Yes, I admit we are. But with regard to the members, no.
How did you get here as the Patriotic Front?
How did you get here as the Patriotic Front? We got here because we thought that we're being governed by people who had the same value for democracy as we do. But we deceived ourselves. We didn't realize that we're being governed by people who have no respect for multi-party democracy. We didn't realize that we're being governed by people who want to decimate multi-party democracy so that they can return one-party leadership in the country. That's how we got here. Because you will recall that in 2022, the Patriotic Front Central Committee met and drew out a roadmap, which was to lead us to holding an extraordinary conference. And we required that extraordinary convention because Edgar Chagwalungu had retired from active politics. And we had to replace him before the scheduled general conference, which is meant for 2026. We were supposed to have gone to a constitutional convention in November of 2022 because we had to amend our constitution to suit the times before going to the extraordinary conference. As we were preparing for the constitutional conference, Hakainde Hichilema sponsored a coup on the Patriotic Front. And nobody in the Patriotic Front ever thought that the government of Zambia would be so interested in the affairs of an opposition political party to an extent that they want to bring it into extinction. We didn't believe that. So we were caught unawares. But that's what happens also with the coups in nations. When there's a coup, everybody is caught unaware. And we were caught unaware. The good thing, though, is that, like I said, that was a short-lived victory for them. The Patriotic Front continues to move on. Now, we are also, unfortunately, subjects of the inertia in the judiciary. We brought matters before the judiciary, and all those matters are gathering dust. How can the judiciary sit on a matter of governance of this nature, dragging its feet on resolving this matter which is affecting the existence of multi-party system? And yet they are quick to handle a matter of wizards, of chameleon. Huh? The matter of chameleon just happened, and quickly they even want to bring television. And now they're even failing to produce witnesses. But they were in a hurry to handle a matter of chameleons. And they are slow to handle a matter of multi-party democracy. What is happening? Huh? Chief Justice Mumba Malila, what is happening? Why is it that there is cold feet on the matter to do with the PF? Please handle the matter and tell us that the coup that was sponsored by Hakainde was legal, so that we move on. We give you the name and forget about it.
I'll ask you this. You've accused the president twice on this show of sponsoring these divisions in the Patriotic Front. Do you have evidence to that effect? And also, why haven't you, as a Patriotic Front, had conversations within yourselves on how to resolve these matters? Because on multiple occasions, I will cite some of the president himself and obviously his PSS, the party. They've distanced themselves from whatever is happening in the Patriotic Front.
My dear friend, your viewers would answer your question even better than I when you say I've accused the president. his footprints, his fingerprints are everywhere. They are littered everywhere in that coup. Everywhere. Never ever in the history of Zambia have you heard that Inspector General of Police commands battalions of police officers to go and give protection to an opposition convention. Never. You saw that during that 24th October 2023 coup. You saw it. Never in the history of Zambia has the police allowed that an opposition political party should have a convention on Independence Day when Zambia is actually playing host to a foreign president. Never. Never in the history of Zambia have you ever heard that ZNBC outside broadcasting services, a very expensive venture, would leave State House and go to Mulungushi just in time for the opening of that convention. What a coincidence. How could they have planned to coordinate so well if the state was not involved? The convention was held in the night. It concluded in the night of the 24th of October. The following morning, the so-called elected officials had already given their fingerprints to the police. Even criminals, when they are arrested, fingerprints are not lifted in the night. But in this particular case, fingerprints of those people are lifted in the night. Don't you see the fingerprints of government there? And the following day, the Register of Societies was being told, can you change the names of office bearers? You saw what happened to the poor lady who said, this I'm not going to do. Where is she now? She was removed from office. Huh? And the lady was obliged by court. Can you publish the actual office bearers that you have? What are the names? She published and she was reprimanded and removed. Can't you see the fingerprints of government in that? And the reason I'm bringing in Hakainde Hichilema is because he is the chief executive officer of Zambia. Nothing and nothing can be done by any institution of government without the authority of president. Nothing. The IG cannot send people to go and protect an opposition political party meeting without the sanctioning of the president. He does it in the name of the president. So yes, these are not blind accusations. There is evidence that Hakainde Hichilema was the sponsor of that coup.
Have you had conversations with other leaders of these factions? Mr. Mao Stampa, Mr. Chavinga on one hand. You're all Patriotic Front.
Yes, we are all Patriotic Front. And I'm sure that you saw pictures that were posted by Miles Sampa when he went to visit President Edgar Chagwa. So yes, there have been conversations. All right, there have been conversations. Now, the question that you asked is, have we come up with resolutions? The only resolution here is that the sponsor of the coup must cut the puppeteering strings. Once he lets loose of the puppets, then probably there would be progress. Outside that, we only have to depend on the law. And the law takes us to the judiciary. And we have done what is provided for in the law. We are not barbaric to go and start fighting and hacking and no. Huh? I can also disclose to you that on that fateful coup day, when we heard that there was this meeting at Mulungushi, we actually sent our people. We sent some people, please go and find out what is happening. But when they got to the gate of Mulungushi, the police were asking them for accreditation. Now we didn't even know where that accreditation was being given. and what the criteria was for giving accreditation. So our people, genuine members of the PF, who wanted to go there and say, but we are also supposed to be delegates. Why are we not delegates? According to our party constitution, we are delegates. Why haven't you invited us? They were barred, they were stopped. Now, who was instructing the police that there must be accreditation? And what was the interest of the police? So you can see what we're doing now, dear listeners, is that we are depending on the law as it is established. That the judiciary must do one thing and one thing only. Look at the constitution of the Patriotic Front and answer the question, that so-called convention through which people elected themselves, was it held in accordance with the constitution of the Patriotic Front? And if the answer is yes, then we will lose the contention ourselves and say, well, the judiciary has told us that we are wrong. And they will show us in the constitution that yes, it is permissible to hold a convention in the manner that it was held in 2023. That's all we're asking. But in the meantime, we will not sit back. We sat back for 2 years because we were confident the judiciary would handle the matter with the agency it deserved. But we have realized we're losing ground. Losing ground because our people are not hearing us. We're not participating in elections. We are happy that we joined hands with our colleagues in the Tonse Alliance because now it gives us latitude to go out and meet our people. And we're happy we're meeting our people. And I'm hoping that my colleagues now in the meeting they're having, they're also looking at the forthcoming by-elections, the 2 wards that are coming up, so that PF will go and work together with our colleagues in the alliance to win those seats, like we did in Petaoki.
All right. Before we open the phone lines, I'd like to get your opinion on this. The Bank of Zambia has come up with new banknotes, which will be launched on the 31st of this month, March. What are your thoughts on this?
Just money-making machine, that's all. That's all they're doing. Tell me what they're going to resolve. What is it that is going to change on the cost of living of people? And what a contradiction of policy. Huh? The world over is moving away from a cash society. The whole world is becoming cashless. For years in Zambia, we've been campaigning for financial inclusion. We've been campaigning that we should have plastic money. We should have e-commerce. Okay? The idea with e-commerce is that please don't carry bags of money to go and buy bread. Go to your